Those are all the only chairs we have here to play musical chairs.
I'll give you a call.
Well, we have these here at the
We do that on purpose because we want you to think closer.
as opposed to further down.
Exactly.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Arundel Comprehensive Plan Review Committee. This is a public hearing on proposed amendments to the comp plan. We'll have a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? All set. I'm going to review the huge audience we have. I'm going to make this fairly concise. If you have questions, please feel free to jump in and give a comment or anything. What we tried to do this year was tackle primarily the residential districts in town and clean those up a little bit, as well as make parts of the comprehensive plan a little bit more concise and less repetitive than they have been. And if any of you would like to move your chairs so you're not staring into the sun, I would certainly understand that disturbance. Well, you could go a little over to that side, I think you'd be safe. So you have to do it right there.
There used to be a book, I don't know where it is.
That's even more than spotlight.
Ah, that's much better, it's more comfortable. Okay. One of the things we did was we added a new vision statement, because the last time the vision statement was written was 10 years ago, and things have changed a little bit since then, and we thought it was time to update that statement in terms of what the town will be looking for in perhaps the next 10 years. We also took sections B and C, which were respectively, section B was a summary of the general plan of development and future land use plan. And then section C was the actual future land use plan, and they basically were mirror images of each other. So we took the two of those and combined the language, so it's now only one section, which makes the document significantly shorter and a lot less confusing. So if you're looking for what's going to happen in a particular area, you need to go to one place as opposed to two. The other thing we took a look at, in the residential areas, particularly R1 and R2, which were respectively 1 acre and 2 acre zones, we had over 100 parcels of land which were 10 acres or more in size. Yet those folks had to follow the rules for 1 and 2 acre zones. So our thinking was to expand some of the uses for the larger parcels so as to be less restrictive for those landowners. And you'll see that reflected in the document. Let's see, other highlights. We have included in the mixed-use districts something called the Trailhead District. It could be the junction of Eagle Trail and Limerick Road. At this point, it's a proposed mixed-use district. We did nothing with it yet in terms of any kind of description. And obviously, the planning board hasn't seen that yet, so we'll tackle that next year as soon as this proposal gets approved. And other than that, it was mostly just cleaning up some language, making sure there's consistency throughout, and trying to make uses make sense for the size of the parcels, as I said. What was R3, residential 3, was a 2 acre district which had pretty much the same description as R2. And as a result of taking a look at that and finding not a lot of justification for a separate district, we decided to move that into R2. So R2 is now larger. Still the same acreage requirements and fundamentally the same uses that the planning board will finalize when they get to the ordinance level. I'll stop at that point and ask for questions or comments if anyone has them. Okay, seeing nothing. Once we were finished with that process, it was a matter of looking at sections D and F which were the goals and policies and the corresponding implementation plan. As we look at those, again, we went through, we reviewed where are we now in town, where are we going. We eliminated some of the goals and policies and actions that refer to the school district, which are no longer relevant for us because of belonging to the RSU. We made the language in those goals, policies, and actions match some of the things that we had proposed for the body of the comp plan itself. And we also updated the implementation plan to reflect some things which had been completed, some things which were ongoing, and some other things which had a time frame attached, but the time frame has moved up because of the time that has passed since it was originally written. So as you look through that, you're going to see those sections are also a little bit shorter because we eliminated some of that language, and in a couple of cases we added a couple of new things. Rephrased some things, for example, with Eastern Trail. It's no longer begin to do this, it's continue to do this because we've already been involved in those things. Any questions or comments now? Yes, sir. Would you state your name, please?
My name is John Durkinverin.
Thank you.
I live in Arundel.
For now.
For now.
Yes.
I heard you mention something about a trailhead district.
Yes.
That's a new proposed district. I didn't see it.
It's in the mixed-use district list, which you will find. Thank you. Page 8. No, yes.
Page 8, starts
It starts on page 8. Mixed-use growth areas, and it says on page 9. And the trailhead district is the last one on the list. At the top of the page.
So it's a mixed-use growth district.
Yes.
I'm wondering why it is that you're looking at so many districts. Why are you defining so many individual districts?
In terms of mixed-use areas?
Yes.
Basically, there are like pockets of places in town, so to speak, where the opportunity for some minimal commercial growth exists. And the trailhead district we put in because it was we didn't want to forget to look at it. That's the first thing. There seems to be some potential there with the Eastern Trail as it increases its usage, and perhaps some willing landowners in the area would be agreeable to some minor commercial development there.
Well, my concern is this, and this is speaking as a member of the planning board. You're fragmenting into so many small, very small districts. This becomes incredibly difficult to manage. If you're going to have, all these little pockets with different rules in all over town, it becomes very cumbersome.
Well, from our standpoint, you would only deal with one at a time. So it doesn't matter whether you have 6, or you have 12, or you have 3, or you have 2. If you're somebody interested in developing a particular parcel, you are in one of those. So the other 5 don't matter.
You know, I said I wouldn't say anything.
Could you state your name, please?
My name is Richard Denon, and I'm the chairman of the planning board. And I have to agree with John. Having these segmented districts is going to lead to a conflict because we're going to say in this district, in this small little mixed-use development, you can do this, but you can't do it over in this other mixed-use district. And that's going to create a nightmare from the zoning point of view and from the codes enforcement officer trying to determine what's allowed in what area.
Isn't the new land use ordinance going to go by sections? So in other words, if you have the trailhead section, somebody came in and wanted to do something, they would just get that trailhead section and everything would be kind of linear as far as their uses and stuff. So, is it, you know, that was my impression that they were going to be broken out into, you know, so they're basically.
But if you've got 8 or 9 of these small little districts, it's going to create an inordinate amount of work to decide what goes where and how it gets regulated and enforced. That's the concern I would have from the planning board's point of view.
Why you can do X here, but you can't do X there. But you can do X right next door, because
But
it's
that's
another
zoning,
district.
right? I mean, the
But how
DB1,
far-
DB2, that is zoning.
How far do we go? Are we gonna go to the individual house?
What we're trying to do here is trying to make more opportunities for folks to be able to come in here and do something and decrease or increase our tax base. So this is allowing more opportunities for folks to do different things.
And if they're allowed to do the same thing in all of the districts, all of these different little mixed-use districts, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'm concerned that I might be able to put a coffee shop in this district next to the trail because people on the trail are going to want one, but in some other section where there's a mixed-use district, I may not be able to put one. I think if you're going to allow them in the trailhead, they should be allowed in all of the districts.
But that's a decision for the planning board.
That's right. That's what you guys are gonna deal with.
As they write the ordinance. And as long as you have a reasonable justification for the decision to be made, it shouldn't be a problem explaining it to a person when they come and say, why can I do it here and I can't do it there? And if they can do it here but not there, then that may determine where they choose to establish that business, if it is a business.
Well, my overall objection is that it increases complexity substantially, exponentially actually, where we actually should be going in the opposite direction. We should be encouraging simplicity. I'm still trying to get the ordinance down to a reasonable number of pages. It keeps increasing. This is going to increase it by just that much more. And we're going to have, you know, an ordinance that's a foot thick just for this little town of Arundel. It doesn't make sense.
Diane?
Well, aside from the Limerick Road Trailhead District, most of these already exist or they've already been discussed. So the southern end of Route 1 corridor of the DB1 is already a business designated area, I believe. The areas that are continuous with DB1 and DB2, I think what we wanted to do is leave it open so that if the planning board decided that they wanted to increase it, decrease it, whatever, that it was already in here, we didn't have to come back and rewrite it. I believe we were already working on the gateway. There's some of the meetings about it, but I knew that there was some stuff being done in the gateway area. And I think part of that's already in business, or all of it's already in business. The Arundel Log Cabin Civic Townhouse Corner, I know that there's been meetings about that when I missed it, but that's already been done and already been discussed. The eastern end of Route 111, while we don't like it, those of us that live there, it's mixed use, it's business, they're there. The only really new one is next to the Eastern Trail. And what we did is we put it in there so that if we felt as a community that we wanted people to be able to open up, or if somebody wanted to sell their property next to the Eastern Trail and wanted to put in something in conjunction with the Eastern Trail, that we didn't have to come back and rewrite it. That all we had to do is go back and change the zoning or allow it in the zoning. So this, to me, this doesn't tell you have to do anything. Tells me that this is where we're telling you that we think that this is where it's going to grow. That this is where the business areas are going to grow in these areas.
I think Diane makes an excellent point. One of the things we need to keep in mind is that this is a forward-looking plan. So the Trailhead District at this point in time, the extent of it is what you see right there. It's one sentence. We're proposing that this is something to be considered. It may be that nothing happens there for 20 years. It may be that nothing ever happens there. But going back to your comment about the complexity of the ordinance, having sat through some public hearings about the ordinance, I couldn't agree with you more. the ordinance is extremely complex, and perhaps far more complex than it should be. However, one of the solutions, apart from reducing some of the complexity of certain portions of it, is also the chapter approach that has been started. So again, if somebody wants to open up a business in the ARD section, or do some other kind of development in the ARD section, all they need is, the few pages that deal with that. They don't need to look at all of the other pieces. Now, from your standpoint, you need to keep tabs on all those pieces. But it's not going to be as difficult for the consumer, so to speak, once that separation of the ordinance into logical chapters has been accomplished. Right now, you're in the thick of it, so it looks awful.
And I don't think I think that we were trying to be cautious as we did some of these to try to make sure that there wasn't a lot of difference between these so that it wouldn't cause this giant issue with this one can do it, that one can do it. I think we were trying to make it simple.
Well, in terms of the broad statements, yes, but again, the specifics are not the job of the comprehensive plan. But the specifics of the job of the planning board, and it's up to you folks to look at the site, what exists there now, the sizes of lots, et cetera, et cetera. One of the more difficult things that we've done, and I freely admit that this will be tough for you, is in R1 and R2, if someone has a large parcel and wishes to engage in some of the bigger activities, agritourism, animal husbandry, you will have to take a look at that large parcel and its proximity to the smaller parcels of the neighbors and what the impact will be and the extent to which that proposed activity will be allowed. So that's going to require some very careful thought. Our thinking was that if you are an owner of an 80-acre parcel in a 1-acre zone, you should not be limited to the restrictions of the 1-acre zone, because you have a parcel far larger than in many of the parcels in the rural conservation area. So you should have the latitude to do a lot more with your land than the 1-acre zone would allow. That's going to be one of those judgment calls, because those will all be conditional uses, and that planning board will have to carefully think about what should be allowed there and what shouldn't, and that there'll be a lot of individuality there. And we know that's going to be tough, but we thought it was the best way to be fair to the landowners for those large parcels, of which there were about 100 of 10 acres or more. So we have a significant number of property owners that are impacted by the changes we're proposing.
Madam Chairman, I just make one observation of what the public said. I just want to remind the public that all the districts that you're referring to were passed by the town last year, which is why the planning board has been working to develop those districts. And in half an hour, you'll be having a public hearing on it. This session, this comp plan committee actually reduced the number of districts. They combined the R2 and the R3 district. They gave greater flexibility to the conservation district, rural conservation district, so that there would be no additional districts created. So they've actually compressed existing districts, consolidated areas, made it make sense in terms of borders of different districts following property lines and logical boundaries. And I think they've actually done a very good job of consolidating some things that were a bit of a mess with the both on the ordinance, the comp plan, and the comp plan now, that had forged a very unique approach to how to deal with residential and rural districts in this community. Planning board will have quite a challenge in themselves this year.
And I have a question about the border protection overlay.
Would you state your name?
Bob Coon.
Thank you.
I'd like to know how that came about to be put back in after it's been voted out with gas.
We didn't touch that at all.
It's in verbiage at the end of the report that.
I know it's there.
It hasn't been there.
It has always been a comp plan.
All right, I'll for, I don't know, 6, 7 years because of some, and you were here at that time. And John was here at that
Yeah.
time.
It's never gone out of the comp plan. However, if it makes you feel any better, it is on next year's agenda for us, because we still have a little unfinished business, and that is one piece of it. If you have a copy of the comp plan in which that is not included, I would like to see it.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Okay, now, we have one item for our regular meeting, and thank you for coming. Curious about that, Rob.
Well, it used to be in the, that when we had the description at the beginning of our ordinance, we had the same description at the beginning of our ordinance that you had at the beginning of the comp plan. We worked together doing those things that would be done. It was voted out about. Maybe it wasn't changed. So that may have been what happened. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I know. So I can tell you, there's got to be something in there. So that's the only thing I can think that where it could have been. I wasn't researching the comp plan. I was going back to the old regulation. It was in, was out, and I'm reading this back in. So
Well,
I maybe.
Let's make sure that before we take another look at it, we straighten out
Okay.
what you're involved, because if, we don't want to continue to have a conflict if there is no need for one, as we do. Okay, at this point, we need to have a vote to forward our proposed amendments to the Board of Selectmen to include on the warrant for the town meeting. So if I can have a motion to that effect? So can I have a second, please? Second. All those in favor of forwarding these proposed amendments to the Board of Selectmen for use in other town? All right.
I'll abstain.
Okay. Okay. Other business, I'm going to propose that we not schedule another meeting until we see how things go at town meeting. If that's agreement with everybody else, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.